Hey, just a quick comment about the judge letting Trump go ahead with, or letting Elon Musk go ahead with his little internet poll on letting federal workers quit. Um, that's all it is, really, until somebody funds it. You know, until the agencies put money behind it, um, and um, and people start signing their Form 52s, which is the request for personnel action. If you don't sign the 42, you haven't retired yet. You still have to actually formally fill out the form. It's not. Musk doesn't know that though, so let him think what he wants to think. And federal employees usually do know, so they're going to have a laugh at Musk's expense, and maybe they'll get to leave because of the uncertainty is a good thing. So yeah, whether they keep getting paid or not, we'll see. If you can leave at the moment, as long as they keep processing your payroll. But there are rules, and they haven't been. I don't think they've been promulgated. They certainly haven't met any kind of notice and comment period. So we'll see what the agency heads do. Um, Life is good after federal employment. I know that, although the benefits are nice to have it. But if you once you're able to retire and you do, it's life's good after federal employment. Um, the other thing about it is that there's a whole lot of people at the GS 13 level who'd love to have those 14s, and 14s that want those 15s. So, um, and there's people talk about the crisis in federal employment. You could stop paying so much money to high level federal employees, and there would still be federal employees to take those jobs, even without the money, because it's not just the money. Um, it's having the ability or the power to get things done, or at least to have one say. There's a lot to be said for that privilege. So, and it's a pain in the butt. I mean, the people who middle managers, the GS15s are the best job on earth, because you've got the senior executive sir taking the heat from the agency head, um, or the next level up, and you've got supervisors below you to you know lead the branches, and become the cognizant or the contract officers who work for the who for whom the cognizant contract specialists work. This is in contracting, but in any organization, to be the person that stands between the senior executive and the first line supervisors, that is the best job in the world, because you don't have to, you coordinate the work and look over things, and your pool of workers is actually pretty good. So, although I bet a lot of 15s aren't going to leave, or SESers. I'd love to see the figures on who's said yes to retire. Um, based on the grade and job and agency. Uh, if they don't look at that, they may be doing well. Again, there's enough people who want those jobs, and if a job needs doing, it needs doing. Um, Now, some jobs don't need doing in the federal sector, and this is a way to possibly prune them. Um, but if you're in procurement at any level, from program office to contracting to budget, which is everybody, except HR. Um, you're gonna because the government's job is really to you know give out money. The contractors are the ones doing the work, or some frontline agency levels, but it's the states that usually run those jobs. The frontline bureaucrats that people see are usually state employees. Um, so, um, or their contract employees. So, um, government employees really have to, their jobs to give out the money and make sure that the money is being spent correctly. So, you know, the lawyers actually work. But if you want to fix that sector, like I've said before, and have people not just babysit their computers, because procurement. There's a lot of that. Fix Congress's spending authority, or have them figure out a way for them to pass things on a regular basis or an irregular basis, so that there's always money. There's a schedule when things get signed and procured, and and if the contingencies no longer exists to the extent that you have to wait for Congress to act before you act, and then act quickly when they do, you can have less employees in procurement, because you can, if you don't have to plan for emergencies and for last minute spending, you can cut some staff, but that takes Congress actually doing things on time, and or finding a way that for money to get spent without automatically, or over a period of years, without waiting for the system that's really broken because of the way American government works, to actually work correctly. But that's a problem of party too. In the budget process, I've got to agree that the Budget Impoundment and Control Act has not worked, mostly because there's a budget committee. So the budget committee has its turf, and it's usually staffed with hyper-partisan people, the most hyper-partisan there are, and then the authorizing committee has its say on how programs are spent, and then the appropriations committees then appropriate the real money. That's where the action is. But then the subcommittees have their say, and then the full committee has its say, and then the chamber has its say, and then you've got to put the two together. So there's like a whole bunch of choke points in spending money, and that's why the bureaucracy has so many people hanging out waiting to actually let the contracts. So it used to be back in the day, really early, that Congress would decide on which contracts would get spent, because it was a small government, for a few million people. It's bigger now, almost 300 to 400 times bigger now than it was back in the day. So, but because we're a 50-50 nation, which is like where things get where things naturally fall, at the halfway point, and they're designed to go that way. It's what happens. Then you will have gridlock, and gridlock was the point to some extent of the American Republic. So, but now that the American Republic is more complicated, we can't do with gridlock. It's just wasteful, and it's aggravating, and people make their livings making sure that the elections are close, or rather that the votes are close, not the elections. That there's a razor-thin majority between houses, or within houses in politics. So, nobody's willing to do something really bipartisan on revenues. If they did that, everything else would fall into play. But there are methods. I put a lot of them on my fiscal equity website. Fiscalequity.blogspot.com. Look at that, and you will see that there are alternatives to our current the current way we collect taxes and spend the money. So, but for what it's worth now, Elon will be surprised at how little what he wants to do can be done without the agency heads going ahead, and how little policy, how little control. There is over agency heads and the people below them. Now that's why they want to Schedule F, so that people can be replaced politically and hired politically. But frankly, the parties aren't that smart, and people have lost the ability to fill good partisan stuff. It used to be easy under patronage. Under patronage, without a civil servant, the local congressman would be in charge of, and the local political machine would be in charge of, okay, who gets a job. And the machine was in charge. I mean, the machine would bring voters in, and people would agree to it because they got jobs from it. That's why it was called a machine. The inputs and outputs were clear. Now there's more powers that's central because the issues are more complicated. Like nuclear weapons and really good drugs rather than patent medicine and safe drugs and effective. Unlike nutritional supplements, which is, that's another crazy rule, or things that's not done because, of the money. Keeping, it's just, a complex stock market, the need for national currency, all that stuff is, requires a great deal of centralization, and you can't fill every job with patronage at that point. Because it's not; those jobs aren't in the hinterlands. They're in Washington or they're in federal regions. Right about that one too. So, yeah, it's a little more complicated than Elon thinks, and yeah, until somebody has the moxie to accept what's being offered in among the plans offered by the advocacy sector, the sector that I'm currently in, it's going to stay the same. Now, I think people are going to get sick of the hyper-partisanship. I think they thought by voting for Donald that they were getting to that. So, we'll see what happens this year because, the CEO mindset only goes so far, and can only do so much in a situation of law, because they're not going to beat the rule of law. The rule of law is too strong. So it's too many people, too many economic interests have too much to gain from the rule of law staying strong. Yeah. So we'll see how quickly the current sideshow goes on. It's not a revolution. People are saying it's a revolution. It's like, no, it's not. It's a sideshow, and sideshows never last forever. So we'll change the channel eventually, and probably sooner than later. So that's what I've got for today on the news of the federal court and Elon Musk and the payout.